Hi guys, welcome to another video. Today we're going to be talking about general unicycle maintenance. I'm going to use this 32-inch oracle to go over all the general things that you should keep on top of with any unicycle. Starting right at the very top of the unicycle and working our way right the way down. Other than that, let's get started, eh? Right, so here is our 32-inch oracle. This is our display one at Unicycle.com UK, so please forgive if some of the components are ever so slightly different to the one you get in the box, because this has been changed and rode and had bits taken off and swapped around and all that sort of stuff. But what we're going to start with first is at the top of the unicycle. So obviously this unicycle as it is right now is perfect. It's maintained and it's kept on top of by us because we use it all the time. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen certain things off to show you what they would look like if they were loose and you weren't keeping top of them, keeping things tight and things like that, and just how that will look. So what we're going to first start with is the saddle. Right, so talking about a loose saddle, this is what a loose saddle looks like. Can you hear that? And it wiggles up and down and side to side. And what that is the bolts here are loose. And you obviously these will work their way themselves loose, I should say. So what you need to do, I'd just like to interrupt Nick there. What he didn't mention is you should also keep the bolts that hold the saddle bumper and the handle tight as well, because obviously they could come loose and you don't want your saddle handle wiggling or your bumper falling off or something. But if he misses anything else, I'll interrupt again. Right, let's get back to watching him. Keep him nipped up with an Allen key. I'll put my head in the way, you can't see. I'll get an Allen key, nip them up underneath here. And that is one of the first things that you should look for when you get on unicycle. If the saddle moves, maybe not go riding, get an Allen key out and tighten things up. Next, looking at the Seatpost Clamp, obviously you can see the unicycle saddle is in the middle, right down the middle of the tyre. If you get on the unicycle and you get hold of the back of it and you can do this, this is a problem. The Seatpost Clamp isn't tight enough, so you need to, again, get an Allen key, or in this case, open the double quick clamp up, nip it all up, tighten it down, so this saddle shouldn't be able to spin in the seat post. So it's the seat post here that's moving. So I'll hold on the seat post there. See that? You shouldn't be able to do that. And obviously if you start riding, it's going to be really annoying with your saddle wiggling as you ride. Right, next, let's move a little bit further down the unicycle there. Just after the seat post clamp, if you move down to the tyre, this is a fairly standard thing. Obviously if there's not enough air in your tyre and it's really soft, it's going to be making it hard to ride. And then on the other side, depending on your terrain, if the tyre is mega hard for when you're wanting to go off-road, so obviously pick your tyre pressures I should say, accordingly. Next one will be right at the bottom of the frame, and it's the bearing holders. But a good way to check your bearing holders just straight off the bat is if you get hold of the unicycle and then another one on the tyre. Can you see that? I'll swap my hands around so you can actually see the wheel though. See the wheel moving in the frame? I'm pushing the top of the unicycle and it's wibbling on the thingy. So if I flip this unicycle over and we do the same thing again, you see that? The bearing housings are loose. So obviously you need to get a Allen key and make sure these are nipped up and holding the bearing correctly. Obviously you don't want these to be, I'll spin them cranks around, you want these to be even. So you don't want one side tightened right the way down. You should never really have these bearing holders touching, to be honest with you. So this side needs a little bit more nipping up. So then bearing, the space between there and there is nice and even. Let that down a little bit more. And then now that wheel doesn't move. While we've got the unicycle this way up, next thing we probably want to look at is pedals. So if you can get hold of the pedal, I'll swap my hand around so you can see, look. And you can do that, and actually, as you move the pedal, the axle here turns round as well. That pedal is really loose, and you definitely don't want to start riding with that, because that pedal axle is a much stronger material than this crank arm. This is steel and this is aluminium. So the pedal will destroy, and I mean destroy, the threads inside this crank. So you need to make sure that your pedals are always tight and on the correct side. We say this all the time, but people don't seem to listen. Pedals have a left and a right. So obviously I've got this unicycle upside down, so this was the left side of the unicycle, but something to keep an eye on. And the same can be said for the crank arms as well. So this nut here keeps the crank arm tight, and it's press fitted onto the hub. But if you can get hold of the crank and wiggle this crank arm and it moves, there's something wrong. Either this bolt's loose, the crank's worn, or something needs tightening up. And again, don't go riding. And then finally, we're probably going to touch on, mainly because this one's got one, is the disc brake. So like any bike or unicycle, you need to keep your disc brake maintained, and this includes checking for splits in the hose. So if it's leaking fluid, it's not going to be working properly. You need to keep a check of your brake pads. So these are a consumable and will wear down. And then just a general visual check, is the rotor all right? Is the brake lever loose? If the brake lever's loose and starts to move forward as the unicycle comes in contact with the ground, because let's be honest, it does, if this lever's forward, it could hit the ground and damage it. And then after that, we're just talking about consumable things. So tyres, obviously as your tyre starts to wear down and you start to see cords through it, probably time for a new tyre. The bearings on the hub, like we touched on previously, bearings start to, they're a fully sealed bearing, but over time they will wear down and it might be time to get a new set of bearings. You can tell this was when you spin the wheel, it'll make like sort of rumbling noise and a sort of a grindy noise. Basically the bearings coming to the end of their life. Yeah, me again. He forgot about spokes. He's about to wrap up and go, yeah, it's all fine and everything, but he forgot about spokes. So if you've got a broken spoke or loose spokes, it's going to affect the true of your wheel, so your wheel's not going to run straight. Obviously, if you're not confident in replacing spokes and re-truing wheels, get somebody that can, but obviously your spokes should be at a decent tension around the wheel. If you notice ones that are effectively rattling and are not tight, they're not doing the job properly. So that's something else to keep an eye on that he completely forgot about. But other than that, let's finish off there. And then other than that, it's just generally keeping a look over most of your unicycle to make sure that it's all tight, the right way around, and the parts you're using are still serviceable. And there you go. Like I said, there's not actually that much to unicycles to keep maintained. It's mainly about loose components and things coming to the end of their life, like tyres, brake pads, bearings, just stuff you need to keep on top of. So yeah, other than that, if you could give us a like, share, subscribe, it changes every time I ask you. That classic YouTube thing would be very much appreciated. And other than that, thanks for watching, guys.